There are millions of disease-causing organisms on our planet. Animals, like humans, get sick. But far from suffering in silence, animals take action. The meek and the mighty of the animal world share one important habit. They self-medicate. We set off to uncover how animals fight sickness and disease. Microbes are lowly organisms, but among the toughest and most successful of all the Earth's inhabitants. Parasites like lice can carry these germs and pass them on to animals. In feeding off other organisms, they transmit disease-causing pathogens. To survive, animals must put a stop to both pathogens and their carriers. The old adage, prevention is better than a cure, holds true as much for the animal kingdom as for our own society. In the Mahale National Park in Tanzania, East Africa, simple hygiene is the first rule of thumb. Parasites feed off warm blood. Once lodged in the skin, a female tick will gorge herself until she reproduces. A serious attack could weaken this young rhesus macaque through blood loss. What's more, ticks carry the bacterial pathogens which cause typhus and Lyme's disease. A curious behavior called lip smacking accompanies another grooming session in the Mahale Park. Grooming rituals last up to 3 hours a day. It's an effective way of removing parasites and minimizing the danger of disease. No body part is overlooked. Lice eggs are picked off with lips, fingers, even leaves, and eaten. Grooming to prevent disease may be one reason why some primates live in groups, but it also plays another role in ape and monkey society. It's a way of making new friends and renewing old acquaintances. Simple preening, however, doesn't do the job. But starlings have hit on an ingenious method of cleaning their feathers. European wood ants produce highly concentrated formic acid to ward off predators and catch prey. Starlings have another use for it. They brush the ants against their feathers. In doing so, they could be calming itchiness from feather growth, as formic acid is a pain reliever. It is also lethal to feather mites. Some ants give off other chemicals like fatty acids, which can kill microbes. Anting is in fact an all-round skin and feather care strategy for starlings. The poor wood ants, meanwhile, have health problems of their own. Tens of thousands of them live in this warm, food-rich nest. It's an ideal breeding ground for bacteria and fungi. To prevent germs spreading, ants too practice strict hygiene, starting with disposing of their dead. They also take out the garbage. Spent pupa shells, meal leftovers, and anything else likely to decay is thrown out. When dead ants decompose, they give off pungent chemicals called pheromones, a cue for the undertakers to move in. A funeral march ends unceremoniously. The ants park their dead and rubbish in specific sites on the boundaries of their territory, a safe distance from their nest. If the starling looks to the venomous wood ant for relief, other animals need look no further than the tip of their tongue. Even domestic dogs pay more attention to hygiene than we might first think. This bitch is not just grooming. She's actually licking away pathogens, killing them with chemicals in her mouth. Two strains of bacteria, E. coli and S. canis, can be fatal to newborn pups, which catch them when suckling. Professor Ben Hart's research at the School of Veterinary Medicine in Davis, California, found that not only dog, but cat and rat saliva act as powerful antiseptics, keeping wounds clean and preventing sexually transmitted diseases.
The evolutionary ancestors of our domestic animals and other animals living in nature don't have veterinary services around. There's no one giving them vaccinations, no one treating them when they get sick, no one's caring for them. And yet they survive quite well. They thrive, in fact. And so there's got to be something to animals taking care of themselves so that they can actually, and in fact, look about as healthy as the ones that we have under our own care.
Basic hygiene keeps most animals healthy and strong, but feeding habits are important too, especially in the wild, where the weak quickly go to the wall. We strike east across the Atlantic to Scotland to film, for the first time ever, some extraordinary scenes. The island of Rum is part of the Inner Hebrides archipelago, which sits off the west coast of Scotland. Weather is harsh, and the island's soil poor and thin. Red deer were introduced to Rum in the 18th century. Their natural habitat is forest, but here they've had to adapt to rocky coasts, granite hillsides, and bleak moors. The deer struggle to find the food and minerals they need to survive, and are consequently small for their species. However, the lengths they go to supplement their diet took one scientist quite by surprise. Professor Bob Furness is a seabird specialist at the University of Glasgow. Setting out one day to study the island's summer population of Manx shearwater birds, he made a discovery that cast the red deer's struggle for survival in an entirely new light. Towards the end of August, before the long winter months set in, adult shearwaters abandon their chicks to migrate back to the South Atlantic. Under cover of night, the chicks emerge from their nesting burrows to practice flying in preparation for their first long journey south. Heat-seeking infrared cameras capture the spectacle of the shearwaters' maiden flights. Beneath the rum sky, the deer graze around shearwater burrows where the grass is enriched by bird droppings. For chicks still grounded, the deer present a mortal threat.
We just noticed a deer casually pick up a shearwater chick and walk around with it in its mouth, and then start chewing. And it chewed it really carefully for about 15 or 20 minutes, and then dropped it. And we were amazed to find that all the bones in the wing had been chewed out, but the wing had been left behind. And the bones in the legs had been chewed out, but the feet were still attached to the body by the tendons and the skin.
Far from being hungry for meat, Bob Furness believes the deer hunger for the calcium in the bird's bones. This mineral is crucial for skeletal and antler growth, and the deer are in need of a dietary supplement.
It's quite clear that the animals are doing this very deliberately. They know exactly what they're picking up, and they know exactly how to manipulate it to get the bone out. And it's quite a sensible thing for them to be doing, because this improves their body condition, it improves their reproductive output. So there's obviously a strong selective pressure to find the minerals that they need.
Even if it means abandoning their strict herbivore diet, animals like the red deer on rum will go to unusual lengths to find the minerals they need for good health. One mineral in particular is absolutely essential, and animals will roam far and wide to satisfy their hunger for it. Elephants risk injury and death to find the right spots in remote underground caves. Here we're high in the Aberdare National Park in Kenya's Central Highlands. The stuff these elephants prize so highly is nothing more than the salt of the earth. Salt plays a vital role in their lives as it does in ours. Like water and air, we simply wouldn't be alive without it. But in the wild, it can be difficult to find enough. Plants contain only small quantities, hardly adequate to meet the 100 grams or so an elephant requires daily to stay healthy. Salt protects mammals' bodies from fluid loss, but it's released in sweat and urine. If salt levels fall, these elephants will dehydrate and eventually die. They return to the same salt licks time and time again because their lives, like those of the buffalo and other mammals, depend on it. The appetite for salt is so strong that feeding continues after dark. By day, all these mammals feed on leaves and grasses, but the vegetation which makes up their diet is full of poisonous chemicals. Salt intake serves a second medical purpose. Not only does it prevent dehydration, salt is used in detoxification, neutralizing poisonous plant compounds in the gut. Animals and plants have a love-hate relationship, a story as old as the history of life on Earth itself. Plants can provide animals with nutrition and medication, but can also make them sick. In their parallel evolution with animals, plants developed strong frontline defenses against attack. Physical deterrents like barbs, prickles and bark make it difficult for animals to eat them. Plants also produce some very effective chemical weapons. Beneath thick bark, toxic compounds like alkaloids and tannins lurk in resin and sap. These poisons are sent to stalks and leaves, areas vulnerable to assault, giving them a bitter taste and discouraging predators. Herbivores encounter this jungle of lethal substances on a daily basis. So why don't they get sick? We journey to the Spice Islands, to Zanzibar off the Tanzanian coast, for an insight into how some animals cope with plant poisoning. Rainforest soils are poor in nutrients, and the trees growing here protect their leaves with high doses of defensive compounds. Indian almond and mango tree leaves form a major part of the Zanzibar red colobus monkey's diet. These leaves are full of protein, but they also contain phenols. In high doses, these chemicals will poison the monkeys. At the very least, they cause indigestion. But the red colobus appears to have found a remedy. They have learnt to eat charcoal. They pick up leftovers from charcoal kilns where it's made for cooking fires. They also relish in charcoal from trees and stumps, charred when pastures are burned. This young colobus learns the antidote from his mother by imitating her. Charcoal acts like a sponge, soaking up toxic compounds in the stomach and safely removing them. These monkeys crunch their way daily through several grams of charcoal. The amount they eat compares closely with the recommended dose to treat cases of drug overdose and poisoning in humans. Nobody knows how the Zanzibar red colobus discovered this antidote, which, apart from humans, they share with few other species. If few animals consume charcoal, clay eating is far more common. Red clay on the banks of the Tambopata River in Peru attracts hundreds of Amazons and macaques. They gather here to purge themselves of the unwelcome side effects of eating seeds and unripe fruit. This natural diet is rich in tannic acids and toxic alkaloids like quinine and strychnine. Soil plays the same role as charcoal. It contains minerals which bind to toxins, removing them from the gut. Clay eating, or geophagy, is one of the most common natural prescriptions in the animal world. The practice extends to elephants, giraffes, rhinos, and many other animals, including primates. Animals actively strive to stay healthy to survive. Many have successful strategies for disease prevention. But what happens when they don't work and an animal falls sick? The tiny island of Cayo Santiago lies just off Puerto Rico in the Caribbean Sea. Rhesus macaque monkeys live here on one of the oldest primate research centres in the world. Macaques are not native to the Caribbean. They were introduced from India for research on Cayo over half a century ago. Although food is provided every day, the monkeys spend much of their time roaming the island foraging for plants. Like other animals living in the wild, they're exposed to disease. The subtropical climate and the macaques' own feeding habits make them particularly vulnerable to intestinal parasites. They get infected by accidentally swallowing worm eggs, which can lie dormant in the soil for up to 10 years. The most common symptom of infection is diarrhea, with the sometimes fatal consequence of dehydration. Nonetheless, this colony of macaques enjoys a high reproductive rate and low mortality. In short, they appear able to cope with parasite infection, even to the point, it seems, of treating its symptoms. The macaques take action to stop the runs. Clay soils contain a mineral called kaolin, which helps prevent fluid loss. The monkeys appear to be using it to counteract diarrhea caused by parasites. The macaques eat so much clay that dozens of clay mines, like this one, have been excavated across the island. Clay may also neutralize toxins in the plants they eat, much like the charcoal eaten by red colobus monkeys on Zanzibar. Macaques' use of it mirrors our own species. Australian Aboriginals, Africans, Chinese and Europeans swallow clay in one form or another to counteract intestinal and digestive problems. If nature is the macaque's pharmacy, it is often ours too. Nature both heals and poisons. Animals and humans alike have learned to wield this double-edged sword. 3,000 years ago, the ancient Greeks knew the benefits of natural poisons. The story goes that in the 1st century BC, Mithridates, king of Pontus in Asia Minor, immunized himself against poisoning by taking small doses of lethal substances daily. The medieval physician Paracelsus wrote, "The dose makes the poison." In other words, too much will kill you, but a little can work magic. Poisons are the foundation of pharmacy. Long before us, animals started exploiting plants' defensive toxins for their own protection against disease and infection. Fields and forests became their medicine cabinets. All sorts of animals, including those on our doorsteps, have learnt to tap into these medical resources. Even the humble hedgehog appears to have come up with a useful plant remedy. Beneath its spines, hedgehogs are prone to ringworm, mites, and ticks. They're also famous for their fleas. Unlike apes and monkeys, hedgehogs don't have grooming partners, but they have found a substitute. These animals are attracted to strong smells, plants like mint and lemongrass. The hedgehog chews on the leaves, working up a fine lather which he pastes on his body. The reason they perform these strange rituals is unclear. Many plant oils have been discovered to be effective pesticides. Hedgehogs could be using them as a way of controlling their parasites. The lather potion certainly seems to work against fleas. Animals use plants as remedies, but how do they know which ones work? Does the way they smell give them a clue to their effectiveness? In Central America, large troops of white-faced capuchins live in the lowland forests along Costa Rica's Pacific coast. These monkeys rub their fur with plants they collect in the forest. At the Kuru Reserve, they've been seen fur rubbing with different parts of different plants. Clematis stems, Slonia tree pods, piper leaves, and citrus fruits. They do it mainly during the rainy season, humid months when there are lots of insects and microbes about. Chemicals in these plants inhibit fungal and bacterial growth and repel ants, suggesting that the capuchins are using them for their medicinal properties. Dr. Mary Baker, an anthropologist at the University of California, Riverside, began a study into how the monkeys select the right plants.
The olfactory cues, the scent, is a stimulation. But I didn't know if there were other cues for recognizing the plants or that might stimulate this behavior. So one of the things I wanted to figure out was, how are they recognizing these plants? Is it purely olfaction? Or can they recognize them visually? Do they use taste? Do they use tactile cues?
Following a series of experiments, Mary Baker found that the cue for plant choice is scent and vision. But she also discovered that young capuchins sometimes made mistakes. They chose the wrong plant. This would seem to imply that there is a learning curve.
When you look at different troops at different reserves, the same plants are available to the monkeys in these different troops, but each troop uses its own set of plants, which suggests that they learn from other monkeys in the troop which are the ones to rub with.
Like the charcoal-eating red colobus, the customs of the capuchin seem to pass from one generation to the next. All 4 capuchin species fur rub, suggesting that instinct or genetics also play a part. The monkeys know which plants to choose, but that doesn't necessarily mean they also know about the plant's medicinal properties.
Those experiments allow me to conclude that they are very much aware of certain qualities of plants, but what they're getting from that quality might be enjoyment or it might be medicinal, and I just don't know.
Could the capuchins just be doing this for pleasure? Cooling themselves down on a hot day? How can we really know why they fur rub or why hedgehogs self-anoint? Our own experience of traditional medicine suggests capuchins do indeed self-medicate. Mary Baker discovered that indigenous people in Central America treat internal disease and skin infections with the same plants used by the monkeys. Man has long been looking to the habits of sick animals to find ways of curing his own ailments. Navajo Indian mythology tells of a plant called osha. Knowledge of its use came from watching bears which dig up the root, chew it, and rub it on their fur. Leon Secatero is a traditional healer.
Many times when some of our people, when they follow the bear, there's many ways that if it's hurt or hurting, it tries to find ways to heal itself. And it knows exactly what kind of medicinal plant they need to get or to eat. And this is the way that we are taught. The osha plant came from the bear. Many of the plants that we know that we use are from the animals. For many, many hundreds and thousands of years, the animal knew about these plants, and they were the first one to use those plants. So from there, the medicine is given by the animals.
The osha plant holds a special place in Navajo culture. It's taken for stomach flu and to bring down fever, and works as an anesthetic and antibacterial. Traditional medicine reflects something of our shared evolutionary past with the animal world. So it comes as no surprise that humans and animals living in the same environment use the same plants to treat the symptoms of similar diseases. Animals, however, use some plant remedies we may never be able to exploit. The Greek philosopher Socrates was killed by the poison hemlock potion he was forced to drink. A caterpillar uses this very same plant to survive an attack by parasites. During the spring, woolly bear caterpillars eat voraciously, building up fat stores in readiness to pupate. When they're good and plump, the parasite strikes. These flies prey on woolly bears, waiting for an opportune moment to inject their eggs into the caterpillar's abdomen. The fly larva develops inside, living off the woolly bear's fat. When it's grown full size, the maggot burrows its way back through the abdomen wall to the outside world. It seems astonishing that any creature could survive such an ordeal. The woolly bear's secret, according to Professor Rick Carban, lies in their diet. At the Bodega Marine Reserve in California, Rick Carban caged caterpillars eating two very different plants: bush lupin, a woolly bear favorite, and poison hemlock. Back at the lab, using an ultrasound monitor to detect which caterpillars had been infested, Rick Carban made a remarkable discovery.
The caterpillar's chances of surviving this
traumatic event, hatching up to 5 fly larvae, increases if the caterpillar has been feeding on poison hemlock. The caterpillar is also more likely to choose hemlock as a host if it's been parasitized.
The sick caterpillar switches food preferences. It actually chooses to eat poison hemlock. Although hemlock doesn't kill the fly larva, it somehow enables the woolly bear to survive attack. Hemlock is full of extremely toxic nitrogenous compounds called alkaloids. A tiny dose is more than enough to kill a large vertebrate, let alone a small caterpillar. These insects seem able to push the alkaloids so quickly through their systems that the toxins don't get taken into their body tissue. Caterpillars don't have brains, but they're still capable of complicated behaviors like responding to changes in their health. Is this a conscious decision of the sort that we would make? Probably not. Rick Carbon puts their actions down to the pressures of natural selection.
Natural selection can act on animals like caterpillars that don't have a well-developed central nervous system. No thinking is going on, but the behavior can still be pretty complex and can still be adaptive to the insect or defending itself and changing so that it defends itself against its enemies.
Even if the woolly bear doesn't know much about why it's eating hemlock, its actions mean it can recover from the attack, pupate, and eventually metamorphose into an adult moth. Evolutionary pressures force animals to take action to maintain their health. Whether it's done consciously or not, the implications can still be very far-reaching. Here in the Kirindi forest in Madagascar, a primate species is believed to be using plants to actively boost reproductive health. Dr. Valentina Carai, an Italian researcher at the University of Pisa, is tracking a species of lemur called sificas. They're unique to this Indian Ocean island. She's been looking into the diet of pregnant and lactating females and come up with some surprising results. This sifica mother is eating the leaves of a tamarin species called kili by the Malagasy. Its leaves are known to have a high tannin content. Tannins are toxic. They bind to proteins in the animal's gut and cause indigestion. But female sificas hunger for tannins, especially when pregnant or after giving birth.
Se invece vengono utilizzati nella giusta quantità per l'animale possono aiutare ad esempio a incrementare.
If they're used in the right amount, not too much, tannins can be useful for the animal to increase its body weight or to increase milk production when lactating. Vets use them as an astringent to prevent internal bleeding and miscarriages. So tannins can be useful for several reasons for these animals.
Not only do sifica females find tannins in kili, but in another plant called fihami. Tannins, like other toxins, also fight intestinal parasites. Protection, perhaps, for sifica fetuses. If, according to Paracelsus, the dose makes the poison, then these lemurs appear to know the limits of their own tolerance. Further research needs to be carried out and extended to other species of lemur. But the strategy is already known to be successful, as sifica females in the Kirindi forest give birth every year, compared to every 2 years in other parts of Madagascar. The origins of their behavior and how they pass it on remain a mystery. The mystery is buried in our remotest past, when our ancestors shared the same evolutionary ladder as the apes. Their ways of treating sickness and disease offered a snapshot of what our own medicines might have been millions of years ago. But do they understand their actions? We've come full circle and are back in the Mahale Mountains of Tanzania with our closest relatives, the chimpanzees. The rainy season here lasts 6 months, from November to May. There's little shelter from violent storms and torrential rains. While thick fur provides some protection, they frequently get soaked. This is a difficult time for chimpanzees. They're vulnerable to sickness, catch colds and coughs. With the rains comes a scarcity of good food. Chimps are omnivores. They eat meat, leaves and fruit, things like figs and a sour-tasting citrus-type fruit called saba fruit. But this is not the season of plenty. Ripe fruits are difficult to find. This is a rare treat, not to be shared. Primatologist at Kyoto University, Professor Mike Huffman, and Mahale Park officer Mohammadi Kalunde have been working together for some time on the subject of animal self-medication. Their work accounts for much of what we know today about how wild chimpanzees treat sickness. Torrential rains and a poor diet leaves the chimps weak and tired. They're vulnerable to attack by parasites. The chimpanzees get infected by eating leaves and grass contaminated with worm larvae, which thrive in these warm, wet conditions. A month into the rains, and many chimps begin to show the telltale signs of parasitic infection, diarrhea and stomach cysts. This female's cysts are the likely result of nodule worms burying into the walls of her intestines. But wormy chimps have a remedy for parasites. A strange behavior which puzzled scientists for some time, until Mike Huffman deciphered it.
Basically what the apes do is to take a leaf one at a time, very carefully and very slowly, pulling it into the mouth, folding it over 2 or 3 times, and then swallowing it. And they'll do this with up to 100 leaves in one sitting. Multiply this by 100, and the stomach doesn't know what to do with it. It's something that can't be digested. so it naturally pushes it through the system. And within about 6 hours, 100 of these leaves come charging through the intestinal tract, pushing out the worms.
These rough leaves act a bit like Velcro. They purge nodule worms from the chimpanzee's innards. Aspilia and some 40 other plants used by great apes for the same ends all have the same physical properties in common. A rough, hairy surface.
It looks like Aspilia. I have to clean it out and see. Could be. No, it's Luago. Ticus exasperata. That's a higher ratio than average. Usually we have 2 leaves per 1 adult worm. But in this dung, we've got maybe 4 leaves tops, and we've got 10 worms so far.
Across Africa, chimpanzees, bonobos and gorillas ascribe to this same treatment. But witnessing it is rare. We know now that chimps self-medicate early in the morning or on an empty stomach, and more often during the rainy season when parasites are active. Chimps build sleeping nests at night high up in the tree canopy. But when they're tired or unwell, they often build them during the day to rest in. This young chimp is collecting a powerful medicinal plant. It's not Aspilia, but a plant called Vernonia amygdalina. Vernonia works in quite a different way from Aspilia. Instead of scouring the gut with bristles, the bitter pith inside the stalk poisons intestinal parasites. The pith contains chemicals which inhibit parasite activity, as well as actually killing some microbes, which also infect humans. The Tongwe people of Mahale use this same plant as medicine. Mohammadi Kalunde knows all about this plant's properties. He's not only a tracker, but a traditional healer.
Kwa kazi ya mjonso, sisi huwa tunatumia majani. Kama kawaida na hii, lakini kwa ugonjwa.
We use this Vernonia plant, which we call mujonso, to purify blood and for a number of ailments. We boil this herb, then cover ourselves with blankets. As we do this, we inhale the steam, which makes us sweat a lot. This helps in the cure of malaria.
Chimpanzees have a complex treatment system. They can combine chemical remedies like Vernonia with mechanical ones like Aspilia to combat sickness. On top of that, their daily grooming ritual keeps the skin parasite-free. But do primates understand that they're targeting the causes of sickness when they swallow these plants? If they did, we might expect them to use the plants with which they treat some ailments and apply them to cure others, like wounds, for example. But they don't. Capuchins don't use citrus and antihistamine on cuts, which would speed their healing. And this rhesus macaque uses only water on her gash. Perhaps even intelligent animals are not aware that they're targeting the causes of their illness, but simply seeking relief from uncomfortable sensations.
It's difficult to know that, and in fact, many human societies may not all be aware of exactly what they're targeting when they take medicines that make them better. They all have their ideas of the causes of illness, but it may not always be the correct interpretation. But I think it's safe to say that chimpanzees and other animals indeed do know when they're not feeling comfortable, and then coming across ways that make them feel better. So they don't have to know a lot of detail to be able to treat a symptom and to know when that symptom has disappeared.
From the rules of simple hygiene to complex treatment of symptoms, it's only in the last 2 decades that science has begun to appreciate the evolutionary pressures that force animals to take their health into their own hands. Perhaps animals know more than we think. Only as long as their wild habitats survive will we learn more about the potential of nature's pharmacy and the potency of animal medicine.
In the beginning, males and females evolved so that they could come together, mate, and produce offspring. And so we believe that sex has one simple purpose: reproduction. But look closer. These are 2 females having sex, and these 2 have formed a homosexual pair bond. These octopuses are both male. And these male dolphins will probably be lifelong sexual partners. This kind of sexual behavior is not going to produce young. Yet, from seals to flies, to date, homosexual behavior has been documented in a few hundred species. Can something that seems to be widespread in nature be dismissed as irrelevant? Or do we need to think again? When we see one animal mounting another, most of us naturally assume that it's a male mounting a female. And scientists have been no different. Most Western scientists were raised on the story of Noah's Ark. To repopulate the world, there must be one male and one female of each species. The importance of reproduction was reinforced by Darwin, the father of evolutionary theory. His work led to the belief that everything an animal did was linked to improving its reproductive success. All the messages were clear. The animal kingdom must be heterosexual. It's not surprising that many early field zoologists who witnessed homosexual behavior chose to ignore it and concentrate on heterosexual sex. In 1892, one report that did document homosexual behavior in elephants carefully protected itself by stating, "Elephants are committing vices and crimes of sexuality prohibited by the rules of Christianity." But what is and what isn't homosexual behavior? One interpretation defines it in animals as genital contact or stimulation, courtship or pair bonding between individuals of the same sex. However, it's a strictly behavioral definition, regardless of motivation or consent. If that's what you see, that's what it is. But while some zoologists chose to ignore homosexual behavior, others were unaware of its existence. Male on top of female? Possibly. You might catch a female laying eggs, but you'd soon lose her in this crowd. It's impossible to tell these penguins apart. In 1922, 5 king penguins were captured and taken to Edinburgh Zoo. On the basis of their sexual behavior, they were named. After 7 years, the zoo finally accepted that something was seriously wrong and got their penguins sexed. Overnight, Andrew became Anne, while the happy couple, Eric and Dora, became the embarrassing Erica and Dora. The problematic Bertha and Caroline became the equally problematic Bertrand and Charles. So king penguins show some homosexual behavior, and so do the killer whales which share their remote Antarctic home. We know this because we can distinguish the males by their large dorsal fin. Yet as recently as 1980, a US government document removed all references to homosexual behavior from a report on killer whales. Since it was documented by scientists over 200 years ago, the study of homosexual behavior in wildlife has been the science which dare not speak its name. Even now, it's only just beginning to whisper. In the same bay frequented by the killer whales is a colony of elephant seals. In the Antarctic summer, they come together to mate and breed. But for more than 2/3 of the year, males and females lead separate lives out at sea. Separation of the sexes was one of the early theories used to explain homosexual behavior. If there were no females available, then males went for second best, another male. But in the breeding season, the males are only interested in heterosexual sex. So much so that they will risk their lives fighting over females. The winner of the battle, the Beachmaster, wins mating rights to all these females. The loser gets nothing. All he can do is take the equivalent of a cold shower. At the end of the breeding season, the Beachmaster and his females head out to sea, but their pups stay behind, waiting to develop their protective blubber. They haven't been totally abandoned. The bachelor males are still around. Unfortunately for the pups, these males make terrible babysitters. For the entire season, they've been prevented from mating with the females. Now they take their frustration out on the pups. They're obviously not consenting, but they have no choice. This kind of behavior has been used to suggest that in animals, one partner in any homosexual situation is always non-consenting. But these bulls force themselves on both male and female pups, and in elephant seals, even adult heterosexual behavior can seem aggressive. If we studied only elephant seals, we might conclude that all homosexual behavior in animals is violent and non-consenting. We only have to travel deeper into the Antarctic ice to a colony of leopard seals to find that this is far from the truth. The male leopard seal is a ferocious hunter, and yet males form homosexual pairs which can only be described as gentle and affectionate. They are very tactile creatures, always nuzzling and nibbling each other. These two males, recognizable by the bump on their abdomen, appear to be consenting freely to courtship. After a bout of foreplay, they begin to dance. This behavior, known as pair rolling, can last for up to 15 minutes, and often climaxes with the males mounting each other. Leopard seals, like elephant seals, spend much of the year away from female company. Such separations are extremely common in mammals, but cannot account for all homosexual behavior. In Africa, for instance, male cobs spend most of their time in large bachelor herds. Although they have been extensively studied, homosexual behavior has never been reported in these male herds. But it is very common among females. During the breeding season, females visit the males in a special courtship arena. It's the female cob which chooses her male, not the other way round. And in order to check on his fitness, she keeps him on his toes. At the same time, in the same arena, remarkably similar behavior is taking place between two females. There are plenty of available males, so this behavior cannot be dismissed as opting for second best. The courtship is extremely elaborate. One female solicits another by whistling. If the second female is interested, the first uses a gesture known as foreleg kicking to delicately touch her genitals. Scientists are trained to link animal behavior to the goal of reproduction. One theory for this behavior is that it serves uniquely to excite the males. But the males frequently appear indifferent, and homosexual behavior is observed among females whether males are present or not. Another theory is that young females court others to gain sexual experience, but the evidence shows that adult females also mount each other. Their homosexual behavior does not stop female cobs from mating with the males. But having done so, they return to find other females again. The truth is that scientists have not found a convincing explanation for homosexual behavior in female cobs. This headbutting was once thought to be a female's way of refusing homosexual advances. But some scientists now think females may be competing with each other for the female of their choice. Heterosexual behavior is easily explained. It creates young. While homosexual behavior in female cobs remains a mystery, it's too important a part of a female's routine to be dismissed as a mere sideline to the real stuff of life. One scientist who chose to ignore homosexual behavior in his studies later came to regret it. From a hide high in the Canadian Rockies, Valerius Geest watched male mountain rams foreleg kicking, just like female cobs. He wrote, "To conceive of these magnificent beasts as queers was emotionally beyond me, but eventually I called a spade and admitted that rams lived in essentially a homosexual society." But whereas most female cobs also mate with males, many younger or lower-ranking mountain rams must wait till they climb the ranks before they experience heterosexual sex. Young American bison also stick to homosexual behavior, sometimes for up to 5 years. Typically, after a period of play fighting, they mount each other. Because older bulls prevent young bulls from mating with females, this behavior was interpreted as misdirected sexual frustration. But in several studies, the older bulls were removed, and although there were plenty of available females, same-sex mounts continued. Many of these early interpretations had one thing in common. Whether for practice or to excite the opposite sex, animals engaging in homosexual behavior had only one purpose: to improve their chances for future reproductive sex. Then, one group of apes emerged from their forest home in Central Africa and forced scientists to reconsider the purpose of any kind of sex. These two, gazing into each other's eyes, are male and female. But as primatologist Frans de Waal realized, bonobos will have sex with male or female partners, with young and old, while feeding or playing or carrying young. And they have sex often, all day long in fact.
Yeah, the sexual behavior of the bonobo, I think, is the most flexible sexual behavior that we know outside of the human species. I usually call bonobos pansexual, in the sense that I would never call them homosexual, because they have not an exclusive orientation at all to one sex or the other. So they use sex in all combinations of individuals, basically free for all.
Female bonobos only have young every 6 years or so, yet they have sex, whether or not they are in estrus, and even while they are pregnant or feeding young. Even the very young have sex, face to face. If any creatures are to break the long-held theory that all animal sex is somehow linked to reproduction, it is these bonobos. A favorite theory attempts to give all this sex a social purpose, linking it to dominance behavior, a high-ranking male putting a youngster in his place. But it's not the whole story for bonobos. Youngsters and low-ranking animals often mount their elders and betters, and as such, the sex often appears reciprocal. So why do bonobos spend so much time and energy having sex with so many different kinds of partner?
As far as choosing partners for sex, I think it is partly dictated by social bonds, by political strategies, and partly by tensions, because when tensions increase between bonobos, it is translated into sexual behavior. Food induces competition, and instead of fighting with each other, that's why we call them make love, not war, apes. Instead of fighting with each other, they have sex and then they share the food afterwards.
These make-love-not-war apes often have sex face-to-face, a position once thought to be the sole preserve of humans. De Waal is as aware as any scientist of the dangers of making links between these highly sexual apes and humans. But there is one point he feels bonobos make very strongly.
Well, I think what the bonobo tells us is that the sexual life of close relatives of ours is extremely flexible and very rich. And so people who claim that the only function of sex can be reproduction are wrong on the bonobo and are probably very wrong on us, because sex can have multiple functions and can be very variable within a larger society.
And homosexual behavior?
It's marginalized only in certain cultures. It's almost as if, it was pushed in a corner, and as a result, people who have homosexual interests became exclusive homosexuals, whereas actually they might be bisexual, and the same is maybe true for many heterosexuals. So there's a sort of divide between the two that is maybe not naturally there, but culturally created by intolerance.
Certainly in bonobos and in other primate societies that have been studied, animals engaging in homosexual behavior do not seem to be marginalized. On the contrary, their behavior is just another part of everyday life. Deep in their forest home, bonobos prefer to make love, not war. But where the forest gives way to open savanna, lives a monkey which at first glance seems extremely aggressive. Male and female savanna baboons live side by side. There is plenty of sexual tension and competition, and with their razor-sharp teeth, males can easily inflict fatal injuries. Despite this aggression, as often as once an hour, a male meets up with another male, and instead of fighting, they partake in a homosexual greeting ritual. Some of these males will form stable partnerships or alliances, while other meetings end as casually as they began. A male looking for a partner appears to take a great risk exposing his private parts to another male. In behavior known as diddling, he puts the means to his reproductive success in the hands of another male. But the risk can be worth it, because while bonobo sex is promiscuous, these baboon partnerships can last several years. The significance of a close friend becomes clear when a rival appears. Two can face up to one. And though the more powerful rival tries to impose himself, an uneasy peace is maintained. While male baboons unite against hostile forces in partnerships that have been known to last up to 6 years, out in the open ocean, some males become partners for life. It has long been accepted that dolphins are playful, physical, affectionate creatures. They're also very sexual. These two male bottlenose may well have been together since they were young. When one partner rests, the other watches out for predators. They nurse each other when wounded and travel together in search of females. They will even share the same female, but the male-female bond is temporary. It is the male-male bond which lasts. Two male couples often meet up to form a foursome. If a dolphin dies, his widowed partner may search in vain for another single male. Sometimes the widower is welcomed by the male couple which were his part-time companions, and they form a threesome. But a widower has never been known to break an already existing male pair bond. In the Bahamas, bottlenose share the warm waters with spotted dolphins. Equally sensual and sexual, the spotted dolphins have a similar social setup. Denise Hertzing has been tracking these two communities for 16 years and has been able to study male-male and female-female couples. In dolphins, both males and females have what is known as a genital slit, and same-sex partners stimulate this slit with their beak or rostrum.
There's a behavior called beak genital propulsion, where they seem to push each other. It's probably just a form of stimulation along in the water with one dolphin's rostrum in the other dolphin's genital. Male-male and female-female.
So why are same-sex pair bonds so strong?
If same-sex behavior has the function of pleasure or social bonding, then what you've got is a mechanism, in addition to other mechanisms, that glue a society together.
Society, in this case, would seem to include more than just one species, as a bottlenose male appears to consent to homosexual behavior with a group of spotted dolphins. Sometimes the interactions between these two species are aggressive. Other times they cooperate, babysitting or joining forces against sharks. But why should there be homosexual behavior between two different species? Perhaps the same bonding which works within a group works across species which cooperate with each other. But as with so many questions in this area, research is in its infancy, and scientists are still searching for the answers. In lion society, bonds between females can also last for life. But lionesses cooperate for different reasons than dolphins. Sisters or half-sisters come together to help rear their young. Lionesses are extremely affectionate towards one another, but only occasionally do they engage in same-sex mounting. Some researchers argue that same-sex partners which come together to rear young should be considered homosexual, whether or not they actually have sex, in the same way that a male-female parenting arrangement would be considered heterosexual. These cubs have a playful family life, even though they rarely see their father. If this lion sisterhood tells us anything, it is that members of the same sex working together can make great parents. The traditional model of one male and one female bringing up a family together is the exception in the animal kingdom rather than the rule. But heterosexual parenting does occur and is most commonly found in birds. But even in birds, there are exceptions. Male grey-lag geese form male-male pair bonds, and when it's time to raise the young, they team up with a female to make a trio. These goslings have 3 parents, a male couple and a mother. On the same lake, some heterosexual couples are also found bringing up young. This fascinating social mix has allowed ornithologist Philippe Carouette to compare the parenting success of heterosexual couples versus the trios.
The advantage for a trio is quite obvious. You have to look at the advantage for each individual within that group. Each bird has in effect 3 birds to look after its chicks, and thus a better defense against predators. Their chicks are much safer. Also, since the female is with 2 males, she has a higher social rank and a better chance of survival. The female also has more time to take care of the chicks and then seek food for herself.
Besides keeping watch for predators and guarding their young, the 2 males defend their territory from other ganders, a role they seem to take extremely seriously. In this particular trio, one male is dominant over the other and spends more time away defending their territory.
When he returns, he performs a triumph ceremony, both to the female and to the other male. So the group is very important. This male is very particular, because although he's dominant over the whole group, he forgets neither the female nor the male. The connection between the individuals is very strong.
But in this situation, is one male playing the role of unpaid nanny, doing all the hard work for nothing, while the other is father of the chicks?
In the trio we're following, the female only seems to mate with the dominant male. If a trio forms with 2 males of the same rank, there will be occasional fights. But in any case, as far as I know, 2 males do not mount each other.
In these cases, both males mate with the female, and so both males will father some of the young. And the goslings do better with 3 parents. So by providing same-sex parents, nature seems to have found an arrangement where everyone benefits. At the end of the breeding season, when the business of rearing young is over, the female will break away from the happy threesome. In grey-lag geese, it is the male-male pair bonds that persist and remain stable from year to year. But if nature has rules for same-sex parenting arrangements, we haven't yet found them. Goslings seem to benefit from same-sex parents, but for roseate terns, the benefits are far from obvious. Off the coast of Massachusetts, Jeremy Hatch and his research team noticed something strange. In several tern nests, there were more eggs than one female could possibly lay.
Understanding who attends nests of this kind is very difficult because you cannot tell male and female apart by looking at them. What we do in order to establish which are males and which are females is take a small sample of blood from these individuals and identify males and females from the DNA in the blood.
Once these terns are sexed, the team colour marked them. They found that the nests with several eggs were attended by 2 females, like this pair. There are more females than males on Bird Island, and 1 in every 10 nests is incubated by a female pair. These terns are also endangered, so could there be a link? In the 70s, female couples were found in several other bird species. Scientists thought that man-made chemicals in the environment might cause females to pair together. So have these female couples been affected by pollution?
A favoured explanation has been that it might be due to some estrogenic chemical introduced into the environment, but we have no good evidence for this. And one of the strong bits of evidence against this is that 100 years ago, there were numerous roseate terns attending nests with 3 or 4 eggs in them.
This chemical theory has now been discredited, but if female pairs are normal, how do they fertilize their eggs?
The explanation for how female-female pairs lay fertile eggs is presumably that they copulate with males somewhere else in the colony, because we have trios that include males, but more often than not, the females that pair together do not have a male as part of that social group that's attending the nest.
So the male is essentially just a sperm donor, and one of the females must take on the traditional male role, hunting for food. But in roseate terns, even in heterosexual pairs, the tasks are pretty much equally shared. While one bird keeps the eggs warm, the other is supposed to be away finding food. There is some evidence, however, that females have a slight tendency to prefer housekeeping to hunting. In our pair, there is one female who always seems particularly reluctant to leave her warm bed. In the end, she takes the hint. Apart from occasional squabbles about whose turn it is to get out of bed, what makes these female couples different?
The females that are paired with other females do not differ very much from those paired with males. As far as we can tell, they don't differ in size, and perhaps more interesting, they don't differ in age. One of the simplest explanations would be that these are young birds, but they're not.
So they have much in common, but are they any better or worse at parenting?
The ways that they do differ are that they lay eggs later than most of the females paired with males. They lay rather smaller eggs, and they raise young less effectively.
In fact, these female pairs have set themselves a harder task. The normal clutch size is 2 eggs. A female in a same-sex couple has to try and sit on at least 4. Then the pair has to provide food for 4 chicks instead of 2. Varying family sizes makes the task of comparing different parenting methods more complicated. But then researchers wanting an easy life should avoid this controversial subject altogether. Take the case of the scientists who traveled 2 kilometers beneath the ocean's surface to study the little-known deep-sea octopus. Imagine their excitement when they began to film the first ever mating witnessed by humans between these elusive creatures. Then imagine their shock when they realized they were watching two males. And the surprises were far from over. These octopuses belong to two different species. The little white male is trying to mate with an octopus over 4 times his size. This finding was so extraordinary that when they returned to the surface, the scientists asked the expert, Janet Voigt, to check that they'd identified the octopuses correctly.
This preserved specimen, part of the Field Museum of Natural History collections, is a conspecific. That is the same species as the white guy that was attempting to copulate with the other octopus. Now, I said it was really easy to tell males from females. If you draw an imaginary line of symmetry through, in between the eyes of an octopus, there's symmetrical first arms, symmetrical second arms. He had a little damage there. But on the third arms, instead of being long, tapered with suckers carried to the end, in males, that third arm is a little shorter, and the tip has got a grasper-type organ.
This third arm is the male's reproductive organ. In these unique pictures, the smaller octopus is inserting his reproductive arm under the mantle of the larger octopus and attempting to copulate. But why? Some biologists have suggested that in these depths, octopuses encounter each other so rarely that they can't afford to pass up any chance of sex. But octopuses are known to be highly intelligent and sensitive creatures, easily able to tell individuals apart. And if the smaller male made a mistake, surely the larger male would realize this and back off. But as Janet Voigt notes,
he does not seem to be at any time perturbed that the other octopus is there.
And the scientists noted that as time went on, the ventilation rate of the smaller octopus increased, suggesting heightened arousal.
Clearly, it's not going to help him pass on his genes to the next generation. This male is simply near the peak of his life, and he's gotten abundant spermatophores produced over the course of that life, and he's had few or maybe no opportunities to copulate with a conspecific female.
It's impossible to say anything more about these fascinating creatures. We simply don't know enough about their lifestyle. But even insects, whose lifestyles have been thoroughly studied, leave scientists guessing about their homosexual behavior. This is one interpretation. The female parasitic wasp is ready to mate. Her irresistible perfume is designed to attract all available males. One male dances for all he's worth, hoping to gain her consent. Another female and another male. So far, everyone's playing by the rules. But this male is getting too carried away on the dance floor. Just as the female signals her admiration, another male rushes in and claims the reward. The original suitor arrives to collect his rightful prize. Flushed with success, he doesn't notice that he's trying to mate with a male. He doesn't realize because the second male, after contact with the female, now smells like her. The first male makes increasingly frenzied attempts to copulate and wastes precious time doing so. Happily sandwiched in the middle, the second male has one more trick to play. Once the female leaves, there's a danger her original suitor might follow her. He must be detained as long as possible. The second male drops his antennae coyly, just like a female. The ruse works. The hapless loser tries again. So could homosexual behavior occur simply because a rival has been duped? It may be true for this wasp, but it doesn't explain the variety of homosexual behavior in nature. And if this behavior persists, reappearing generation after generation, then it must, so the argument goes, have a genetic basis. To study this question, scientists turned to the fruit fly, the creature whose genetic structure they know better than any other. In the wild, about 8% of these flies show some homosexual behavior. In the laboratory, a team of researchers led by geneticist Jean-François Ferveur is attempting to find a genetic marker for this behavior.
When we observe the behavior of this small fly, we find that it's extremely sophisticated. Its tiny size may make it seem unimportant, but that's simply not so, because it has the same biological functions as any vertebrate or human being.
Sophisticated though this fly is, the team has managed to modify its behavior and artificially increase the rate of homosexual behavior to 90%.
To produce these generations of flies, we inject a fragment of DNA into an embryo, thus modifying the fly's genome. And so, artificially, we reproduce homosexual behavior.
The male with the red eyes has been genetically modified. He's trying to court the white-eyed, unmodified male. The red-eyed fly licks the other's genitals. But White Eyes scorns these advances and makes a show of cleaning himself up. Red Eyes doesn't seem to notice that he's been rejected and tries again. Ferveur believes that rather than actively seeking male company, this modified fly can no longer tell the difference between males and females. So instead of finding a genetic marker for homosexual behavior, the scientists may have simply removed the male's ability to discriminate. When several modified males are put together, something extraordinary happens. They all attempt to copulate with the male in front, creating a chain of dancing males. So does this artificially produced behavior suggest that there might be a gene for homosexuality in humans?
I think if you want to simplify or compare an organism such as a fly to humans, then the only comparison you can make is that a fly itself is already complicated enough. So in humans, to simplify certain behavior to one gene, or even a series of genes, I think we're still a long way off.
As these Japanese macaques reveal, most behavior is too complex to be determined solely by genes. Learning surely has a part to play. "20 years ago, one female macaque began collecting stones and playing with them. Try as they might, scientists could think of no beneficial reason for this behavior, and yet more and more monkeys copied her. Today, most of the females in this colony play with stones. Young macaques come to recognize the troop's favorite food trees and sleeping spots from their parents. They learn to interact with the world around them in the same way. This is how the troop's unique culture is formed. Same-sex behavior forms part of that culture. Most females in this troop form intense pair bonds with other females. Paul Vasey's been studying this behavior for the past 6 years. His findings have thrown new light on the study of homosexual behavior.
When I first started studying female homosexual behavior in Japanese macaques, I was really interested in the whole question of why are the females doing this? Why are they investing so much time and energy into this behavior, which doesn't seem to have any relationship to promoting reproduction? So the homosexual behavior in the female Japanese macaques represented something of a paradox when viewed from this particular perspective.
Vasey began by checking all the theories that have been put forward to explain homosexual behavior. In this colony, there seems to be no shortage of adult males looking for females. But even so, in science, everything has to be rigorously tested.
Some researchers have suggested that animals engage in homosexual behavior only in situations where they lack opposite-sex mates. What I found is that females will engage in homosexual behavior even when there are males present. And even when these males are sexually motivated, in other words, the males are soliciting them for sex, but the females still ignore the males and choose instead to engage in homosexual behavior.
So if males are sometimes present, could females be behaving in this intimate way in order to attract the male and turn him on? No, because Vasey shows that if they can, females prefer to avoid males when engaging in homosexual behavior. Typically, the pair switch back and forth between sex and grooming each other. So this behavior doesn't attract males. But what about the theory that gives sex a social function?
One of the theories that's been used to explain homosexual behavior in animals is that it's a dominance interaction. And typically this explanation suggests that dominant individuals mount subordinate ones as a way of expressing their dominance. So I looked at this idea in Japanese macaques, and what I found was that both partners participate in mounting, both partners participate in being mounted.
If both partners mount equally, could this behavior have something to do with an alliance, as suggested for baboons? For instance, when an aggressive male turns up, the females could support each other.
If natural selection had favored this behavior as an adaptation to form alliances, we would expect that females would prefer to engage in homosexual behavior with the most powerful allies possible. That's not the case. Females don't tend to target particular dominant females, which would be valuable allies.
Finally, what about parenting? Do these female pairs protect each other's young like lions and roseate terns? The answer appears to be no. At best, females ignore their partner's young, and often they are highly aggressive towards them. So what is Vasey's hypothesis to explain the macaque's homosexual behavior?
Most of my research has shown that there is no social function to the homosexual behavior. What my research does show is it seems that females are engaging in the behavior simply because it's sexually pleasurable.
If females do engage in homosexual activity for their own pleasure, where does that leave the males? The homosexual behavior in these females does not stop them engaging in heterosexual sex, and therefore does not appear to affect reproduction. They are bisexual, consorting briefly with a favored male before returning to partnership with their chosen female. This behavior holds for the animal kingdom generally. Most animals that engage in homosexual behavior are at some time also heterosexual. By suggesting that the main purpose of this behavior is simple pleasure, Vasey knows he's going out on a limb. Scientists, taught to look for beneficial reasons for behavior, are wary of suggesting that adult animals might simply be enjoying themselves. Link homosexual behavior and pleasure, and you have an explosive mix. To gain access to a certain female, males not only have to chase off other males, but also her female partner. He gets his female. If Vasey had suggested that heterosexual behavior is pleasurable, it wouldn't seem so controversial, because pleasure, in this case, has a reproductive goal. Vace's work has put the sex back into homosexual behavior. And if pleasure, pure and simple, is important for macaques, could it be part of the story for other animals too? The answer is that until these ideas are tested by scientists, we just don't know. But what could be more pleasurable than a hot bath on a freezing cold day? These macaques live hundreds of miles further north. They have adapted to enjoy hot baths. Often, adaptation is a key to survival. But what if this adaptation is for pleasure? Might this also be true of sex? In primates, homosexual behavior is non-existent in some species, occasional in others, and, in these Japanese macaques, very common. Compare totally different species, and it seems that when it does occur, homosexual behavior in animals exists for many different reasons. Since Darwin's time, people have looked at the natural world in search of answers about themselves. But homosexual behavior in a few hundred species is a mere drop in the vast ocean of animal behavior. This is a science in its infancy, and each year, as more cases come to light, more questions are raised. Perhaps all that can be said is that homosexual behavior is as fascinating and diverse and complex as any other kind of behavior. And as such, it surely has to be worth studying, like any other form of natural behavior. For only when we can observe homosexual behavior in animals with open eyes and open minds can we even begin to ask the popular question, what does all this mean for us?